Hey, muy buenas noches, everyone. I hope everybody's doing well, blessed, and enjoying family. And as always, muchísimas gracias to everyone for you guys' words, prayers, time, and support. Desde el corazón se los agradezco. And since what's said is word, today I want to touch on a camarada I had the pleasure sincerely to have met. Beto from Colonia Chiques. Just to take you back a little bit, I met Beto mainly in the hole, right? And in Vacaville. And it was right after that riot. For those that have been listening to my story, I didn't have time to really get to meet the camaradas, right? Besides, went out there, what's going on, what are we gonna do? Vámonos, let's boogie. So, right after that, it was just a brief 1 yard, and at that yard we were in pairs and waiting for something to crack down. And as you guys know, it cracked down at the end, right? And, we all got the bad end of that stick. Bad, right? But the homie from Colonia, he looked the part, Me, yeah, they cracked me with something behind the head that till day I still have that scar, right? And, Vacaville canes and stuff like that. But the homie, he had two shiners. We were just outnumbered gacho, right? But it wasn't about that. At the end of the day, it was about letting our presence be known out there, right? At least the ones that were willing to be out there, right? Because in reality, there was a lot of so-called sureños that could have gone out, but didn't. There was 15, 16 at the most of us, right? In that riot. And man, the paperwork states, over 100 norteños, which it's understood, it's their backyard and it was rocking across the street. So it was just basically, it's just time lapse, it was them times. But anyways, like I stated, the homie, he was, well, at the time I was still a young pup, you could say, right? But the homie had already some age on there. I'm not gonna say he was old, but he had some age, For those that know Beto, he didn't ever shaved his head, right? Of course, he had all tacas, but he was one of them that the back of his head had them pit bull wrinkles, right? So, anyways, that's not important. Just see if somebody can pinpoint him, right? But the homie, when we went to Willis, to the hole, I got to meet the camarada like real good, because we became close back there for the time we were back there for the same reason, There was a lot of people that could have gone out and didn't, and the ones that were out there, they had the chance to win it out, but didn't, right? And that includes the camaradas that were there under medical that still rocked, right? Even though from the gate it was a losing mission, regardless, however we wanted to put it, right? But anyways, Again, I got to meet the camarada. He had a grip of time. He had them ridiculous sentences. Not just double, triple life plus 100 years or something in that aspect, right? But anyways, we were there to. We eventually ended up catching the buzz, right? I believe he caught it to Centinela at that moment, and it's when I, Casper Conejo from Monte, a few camaradas, we caught it to Ironwood. Like I mentioned before, they ended up splitting us by each yard. But anyways, within time, you guys know my story. I don't like to backtrack and touch on things that are out there already, right? Because I don't want to waste you guys' time. But anyways, within time, somehow, some way, you ended up catching a shoe or something to that effect, right? But he started answering to Tio Chino, the Pili from Maravilla. And, again, the camarada had a good head on his shoulders. To what extent he was supporting them, that was amongst them too, right? He was, he was underneath them, believe me. He had yardas, he was doing his thing, right? And, I don't know if with his neighborhood, with yards, whatever he was doing, it was their business, right? But, we ran across each other in Tehachapi, and that's why I'm a real fond believer that what comes out of your mouth, you're gonna hold regardless, right? And sometimes you can't, cause he got there right before I got kicked up to the 180 there, and I stated it before, getting kicked out there, there was already people on the yard waiting on me to get out for us to go ahead and request that yard from Beto from Venice and Joker from they were they had gotten out from being validated for years behind that step down program, right? But they weren't sending Toro, Chino, or none of the Pilis back to anything, right? So Chino was mad. Now, as you guys know, I went down there. I requested to step aside, or I had something that was told to me to take care of, and whoever got in the way, I was gonna ram through them. It could work both ways. By this time, these vatos, there was a bunch of them, right? That were getting fresh kicked out under this program, and they were aware who was on the yard, right? Regarding this, as you guys know, after he agreed to step down, we went on lockdown, and next thing you know, a wheeler got dropped. That came out with word to hit the Judas on the yard, and they basically crashed the cell in the middle of the night with a little them shot grenades, whatever, and somehow, some way, they found a fierro, right? Not mine. Mine was on me, but they found one regardless, right? It was just an okie doke. It was just a way for these individuals to get me off the yard, because, well, the episode I was going to put out was going to be about Güero and basically how his career concluded right down the line because of Buckethead from Venice. But I gave my word I was going to touch on this. So, anyways, I say it once, I'll say it again, just because it's a mainline don't mean these bots walk around with their chest pumped, but when push comes to shove, they pee on themselves. They're talking with the police. That's why the police wants them on the yard and allows them to do their thing, because because it's a 180 and where it was allowing gambling, selling, buying dough from different races. It's a no-no, right? Because it's a recipe, excuse me, for a disaster. Not to mention, shortly before I went out there, there was no teños on the yard, and I believe there was only like 10 of them, and this vato wanted dope, so like it was a time where it was active amongst norteños and sureños, so I guess they played that weenie card, right? Which is don't take off your tats because this is our yard, all that. Just running the lips, right? When it's something's a problem, you handle it. But the norteños acted. So they all went out there with pieces and they hurt a lot of camaradas, right? But anyways, I was getting back from them dropping them kites and the hooters removing us from that yard. And it was real obvious because it wasn't just me, it was all of the ones that were under word from Chino to reset everything, right? That included the pipelines going back to 7 block. And I didn't get to see Beto, right? Before he got kicked out. And homeboy, I don't know if he thought we were still out there and everything had gone well because we hadn't came back. I don't know, right? But I didn't get to speak with him. The point is, he got out to the 180 from 7 block. And these vatos were well aware that 7 block was where Tio Chino was at. This before they got in line, right, and started setting Tio Chino, and next thing you know, he dropped everything right on these individuals because he had what he fiend for, why he was upset, to be sincere. All that moving on the yard and happening didn't really have no negative effect on him. Them not reaching, hitting on the yard and not reaching back out of respect, that was bothering him, and it's understood, right? Because there was a real good pipeline to get things back there, believe me. But anyways, Beto went out there and that homie went through reds and came out and he's probably seen nobody was there and he waited on I'm not gonna say soldados, but he waited on word, right? But they didn't give him that. He shouldn't have done that. By this, I'm not trying to minimize nothing he was. Again, I was with them in a losing war, and he didn't back down, right? But once you're under a pili and you're dealing with another camarada that's underneath another pili, you gotta move with caution because you don't know what that effects it's gonna have, right? So you tend to wait for another camarada that would be under the same pili or at least in touch with him to move in pair. That way you have something to back you up. The problem is, again, when it has to do with dope, you best stay clear from that mission, right? You see, before they started showing respect back there, everything was good because I was going to get out, set the mesa, work as a mesa, and make sure to touch base, right? And Tio Chino knew this. So basically, we were still in A block, and they ended up whacking the homie. On camaradas, they smoked him up, with bogus things. First off, stating that the homie had walked off a yard, just disappeared with no type of write-up, which was a lie. He had presented, he had his 128E in his lockup order. and he had done a pegada, right? Again for Tio Chino. This is how loyal he was to Tio Chino. But I'll say it again, loyalty only comes in the form of negra. Us, excuse me if I include myself, as campuleros, sureños, we're only valued on what we can bring. That era that if you haven't well set and you're a warrior, was starting to become extinct as it has now, right? And anyways, it was like a little thing, right? I ended up getting moved back to 7 block, and it's when Beto hit 8 block, which was a whole. And right in that time is where they started hitting Tio Chino with that poison, right? He was feeding for it. Again, Tio Chino wasn't tolerant of nothing. I said it before, I'll say it again. When he was out in TJ, he was something completely different than when he was in Tehachapi. He was having homies wigs pull for fishing and not being important, for missing gallo, for not coming out and showing your presence for shower. Little small things that will be disciplined in a different aspect, right? Not even a knuckles, coscorrones, right? It was straight remove them. There's no room for mistakes. So anyways, the camarada had done everything correct. He was back there for a pegada. But since he was starting to get that cafe for the vena, you know, when Beto tried to push, Yoshino shined it. He ignored everything. Straight up, you know, it was like nothing ever happened. You know what he said? Exactly. Exactly, because as bad as I say, you know, I partake in sending palabra to the whole, right? To a vato from Anaheim, stranger. And it was, I sent him on a mission. He failed the mission, even though he had gotten removed and whacked. You know, again, it's real easy to say I'm this, and that. But when you're going solo against an army, are you going to buck up and boogie? Or are you going to try to be smart? Because you know, them people you're supposed to bump heads with have reach. It's a tricky thing, right? But you can't beat someone that fiends for their malilla to be over, or to think they're gonna treasure you over that high. Basically, he felt the mission, right? That words that Chino used was he should have got it off the minute he stepped out, knowing they had removed you and everybody else from the yard. Should have picked up a fierro and. But let me tell you, when I got there, I got a piece ASAP because there was already a lot of camaradas waiting for it, right? That gotten kicked out. So they knew who I was and they supplied it. But when everybody in their yard is on their Güero, Joker, a bunch of others, you think they're gonna come to your cell and offer you assistance? Miedo no anda mano. Fear's a big factor inside. The fear factor plays a big part. But that was considered as Beto failing the mission because he didn't act right, because he was trying to do things correct. But that didn't matter because At least once a week, that stuff was coming in, and that's what mattered. That's why everything got swept under the rug, and at the moment, Güero was still allowed to continue running the yard, even though he was breaking every rule you can imagine as a campolero. But a Billy was getting high, so he was allowed. But anyways, everyone, I just thought I'd drop a short one on this camarada from Chiques. You know, I'm be sincere from A Black, A Block, excuse me, to where he got hit. I don't know where he went. I don't know how he took it to know he had gone back there for a pegada. He had gone out there with word and he stayed true to it. It was just the means right at the moment. And that same Billy he was doing everything for is the one that shot word to hit him and remove him. And if he came out to hit him again, that's one thing I will give the homie from Anaheim respects. You know, he did his thing, he hit him. And on an appeal, I guess, he told him don't come out no more because there ain't no coming back for you. So the homie took off. Of course, his feelings are personal, but just imagine that. So I'll leave with this, you know. We tend to be guided to, you know, do everything right. But I'll leave it with a question. Please tell me from what you're seeing and hearing and or where there's acting on orders and how it's playing out, what is doing things right? Or is it something real out of place to ask loyalty back? Remember, there's been cases of homies, and I include myself, I have received some bad things out here in Mexico because my duty was to protect the Pili. But where's the loyalty? So just open your eyes, you know. Stay true and loyal to those that deserve it, that have shown it to you, no matter what. Don't ever doubt family, but at all times be smart with that, because sometimes family can be tricky, right? At the end of the day, it circles back to be smart on everything. Just take, you could say I'm a BSer, whatever. You could call me whatever, but at least from all this, take the opportunity to take whatever you see before jumping the gun, sitting down and analyzing it by yourself. Answers will come. Believe me. Stay true to yourself and loyal to your loved ones. Muy buenas noches.